All right, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us here and also online. My name is Herman Raman. I am the Fair Manager for Art and Technology, and I sort of oversee the curation of Digital Art Fair. Today, for the final talk of the day, we will have a talk about building digitalness, bridging bridges for a new ecosystem. And on the panel here, we have the three various team guests. We have Hannah, we have Elio, and we got artist Ting Song. So we'll just go down the line. Everyone sort of introduces themselves for like a minute or so, and then we'll take it from there. Hannah.
Hi, I'm Hannah Cho. I am the managing director of Hyperfuturism. Hyperfuturism is an artist collective, and we have 55 artists from 26 different countries. We operate as a label more than a gallery and a studio, meaning we kind of treat each of our artists the way a record label will treat their artists. Each of them are their own brands, and we started this way because we feel like digital artists have certain hurdles that traditional artists don't have. It's a new technology, new way of doing things, and these are the issues that we are addressing.
Hi, I'm Elio Dana, co-founder of Hoffa Gallery. We're an international contemporary art gallery representing over 80 artists currently, and we particularly focus on Asian artists and also some generative and digital.
Hi, all the audiences online and offline in physical world. Nice to meet you all. My name is Ting Song. I created films with my AI tools and I won over 23 Global Film Festival awards last year. No Oscar qualification yet. I failed. And my AI art pieces got collected by Venezuela National Museum, making me the first crypto artist collected by a National Museum last year.
Thank you for the short introductions. So we've got sort of a very distinct, different sort of speakers today, but I think there is this sort of common talk and common narrative that we all sort of push is this idea of digitalness. I think at the Digital Art Fair, we all often question in our sort of curatorial circle, like what is digital or what is digitalness? Like a screen is digital, yes, but like we forget how often the digital screen affects our digitalness of day to day. So I think today we're going to focus on sort of how the art ecosystem from the traditional world into the sort of current world that we have, how that has changed and how that has affected how we show, produce, collect, and make art. So Hannah, I'd like to start with you. So Hyperfuturism is a collective of artists. Is there sort of specific um, limits or specific reasons why you chose the artists, or do the artists sort of choose themselves? Like, how does that sort of function within your space?
That's a great question. So, what's quite unusual about our situation is that the artists were more or less self-selected. I could say that my co-founder, who is an artist, curated the group, but it was a collective agreement to work together, and they were proud to be representing one another really as a group. So, yeah.
If you've noticed sort of the really nice booth at the front, Hyperfuturism, you see that there's a lot of variety of medium as well. So, the idea is not only just screens, there's silk prints, there's sort of prints on the wall, there's sculptures as well. So I think it's sort of interesting for me to ask you, like, how do you navigate digitalness within your artists? So, like, are they inherently digital or are they producing digital works? Like, how do you sort of navigate that?
Yeah, like let's first talk about what is inherently digital. And I think when people hear the word digital, they think something on screen. And for us, digital art, there are two things. There's one, the tools that are created, the digital tools that you use to create art, and there's the presentation that is digital. And in that presentation, this presentation here, we really want to show scope of artworks in different presentations. And our artists, in that sense, are all digital first artists. They come mostly from commercial training, so they're highly technical. They use advanced technologies. But in terms of their presentation, they like to explore different ways.
Cool. Elio, so Hofa Gallery has been around for 10, 11 years. Wow. Congratulations, firstly. 11 years is a long time. And if you look back, it was 11 years ago, 2020, 2012, yeah, 2012, London Olympics, all of that. Like, how has the sort of scene? Okay, so when I used to live in London, I used to work for sort of these two artists that are represented by Listen Gallery, Goodman Gallery. So really sort of high functioning artists in the market. And as a young studio manager, I asked them like, oh, what do you think of the art world? Because as a student, like the art world is like scary, it's daunting. And Adam, one of the artists, his reply is very simple. He was like, well, what you need to understand is that there's a lot of art worlds. There's not just sort of one unifying major one. There's sort of one big one, and there's like all the small ones possibly. So in your experience, from that 11 years of working in this field, like how has that changed from the start till now? And has your eye changed? Has your taste changed? Or has it been sort of the same throughout the whole years?
Thanks. It's quite a broad question, but it's really good one. Well, first of all, it's important to say I co-founded a gallery with my wife, and we met precisely 11 years ago. And she came from a background of art. She studied art in Basel. I came from a background as being a musician, artist, and I was involved a lot in digital and marketing. Which you needed to know in order to break through at the time as an artist. And we combined the knowledge we had, and we both had artists in our family, painters, and so we were born around this, and we sort of just immediately clicked and realized that this is what we wanted to do. We were 27 at the time, and we we took a lease. We created a company with £100 and took a lease that we couldn't quite afford on a gallery that was pretty much the size of this stage. And we started, applying digital marketing skills that you would utilize on, luxury products, or, so things such as Google Ads, which everyone was like, in 2012, they were asking us, how can you sell a painting online? People don't even see it physically. But the truth is that we were very careful at selecting the artist. Our first ever artist we signed was Zhuang Hongyi. We sell more than $5 million a year of Zhuang Hongyi at the moment. And, back then I remember...
So is that the artist that was commissioned for the Guangzhou Rosewood?
Zhuang Hongyi has created a body of work that is, very traditional Chinese in a way, because it utilizes fine rice paper, which is cut in the shape of a lotus flower, which has, a lot of symbolism. And plus, this whole thing is his love for the color pink, which is a forbidden color in the communist China. So, he had this very kind of subversive, and he started using this. Created this technique that is basically a physical painting, but it's changing and has this illusion because color changes as you move around it. So it's never the same. Wherever it sits, wherever you look at it, is different. And I remember back then we had to cut the floor, and put the paints in the basement because we were selling a lot, but we had no walls. And then that's how it started, and we just grew, and we still work with Zhuang after 11 years. We show here in Art Central. We show in Miami next month, and some of the major fairs, Tokyo, etc. And for us, it's always been very much about being loyal to our artists. And I think there's like also like an energy that kind of flows between the galleries and the artists, and like there's a lot of giving and a lot of process, and everything that it takes to be a great artist. And for us, I remember we started with a small gallery, and then in 2019 we took over what was at the time our bank, Barclays Bank in Mayfair. We had to guarantee with our houses, and we had to like take like a loan from like some kind of half loan sharks and like make sure that we could refurbish everything. But we paid off the loans in like 2 months, and the gallery boomed like crazy. I think after 2 months, COVID kicked in. We had to close down, and that's when we started again applying very I don't know if you guys know, and I feel almost bad about these things, but like back then, you could do things such as create a lookalike audience in Facebook and Instagram. So just plug in our whole database and then be like, find us the same audience in this country, and suddenly we're having like 100 inquiries a day during COVID, and just I think that's we were always growing, we were always doubling and tripling our turnover year on year, but during COVID, it just completely exploded for us. And then after that, we started really focusing on getting into all the major art fairs. And so it became this relationship where all that process and giving from the artist, was, and all that kind of struggle that we went through to get to that level was kind of, just came together and really kind of elevated. And but ultimately is about, for us, is about the art. We're always focused, not following trends, just really keeping that honest eye and being honest with yourself, the same way artists are honest with themselves in creating something. They kind of have to strip it down so much and just find that essence and that style that becomes very recognizable for them. And as an artist, you always could be so creative and you could move in so many directions. But we realize we're working with some artists that are now in their 60s, and they just define that one style, and just when you see it, it's just so tweaked to perfection. And you just you find that almost that way that you can just stay in that style and remain really also interesting. It's very
Okay.
difficult.
Yeah, I think it's interesting you say you sort of ended it on the idea of like perfection, of like skill and craft, which then brings me to Ting Song, who uses a lot of these AI tools that you have available. And I think the thing about AI, I think, is it's not a perfect tool. The same way every medium is not a perfect medium, but what's really great is the imperfections of it. So I think one of the projects that really stood out was she used a sort of ancient Chinese poetry that from way back, and sort of push it through an algorithm, and it generates new poetries in the same form as the original data sets. So I think it's this idea again of bridging that traditional and then into the now and the modern. So Ting Song, if you want to sort of explain a bit more of the practice, or when you approach a project, do you see the sample size first, and then it's like, oh, I'm gonna use AI and do it? Or were you always like AI first and then try to see what can fit in that model that you want to use?
Why I use AI to write poetry and learn traditional Chinese poems format? Because I grew up in a family with four of my family, they're traditional Chinese literature professors. And since I was 4 years ago, I thought there's no other major I will learn instead of traditional Chinese literature. So all I want is going to Peking University to study traditional Chinese literature. Then 10 years after that, I chose Tsinghua University to do that. And my point is that when I use the text to image model, text to 3D asset model to do my films, I think all the beauty I could deliver is from the core of what I feel from literature. There are all different kinds of texts in different format. For example, Renaissance. There are so many artists. They found, oh, how beautiful the literature was, so they decided to paint. And for me, I decided to use those kind of AI tools to express that. So I think coding, in my eyes, is another kind of language. If I treat the coding as one of the language, I need to use that kind of language to express the emotions, meanwhile, transfer the knowledge. And that's the most important thing I learned from Tsinghua University, because even I'm a humanities student, I have to code. And for Herman just mentioned, which is a very important point, AI is not perfect. auto AI is not perfect. It's still inspiring. It's still full of philosophical thoughts. For example, during the Los Angeles SIGGRAPH is number one computing vision conference all over the world. And that day, NVIDIA open sourced a kind of new algorithm called Neural. Neural is a video to 3D assess model, but in my eyes, it's full of the philosophy interest because actually the logic of the whole paper, the computing paper, is about how to imagine different kinds of voxels uh, below the light and how to make the abstract things very, very down to earth based on the computing logic. I think it's very interesting because all kinds of images, all kinds of videos, all kinds of voices and sounds we heard today, they are all informations, and they just choose another way to transfer one kind of information into another kind of form. So that's one philosophy interest I got achieved during my AI procession. The second one is was happening 3 years ago when I trained GAN, generative adversarial network, just I showed to Hannah the tie-dye pattern I earned through that algorithm. I I found out that if we human beings, I mean the typical human beings, we human beings could have the best surrealism artist. I think his or her brain is very different from the normal ones, full of strange but beautiful, adorable thoughts, very different from the normal things. But for Gan, the algorithm, he or she just doesn't care what is water, what is not, what's a dog, what's cat, what's red, what's black. There's no limits inside his or her logic. So then 4 years passed. I still now hold the opinion that when doing the surrealistic vision, when doing very sci-fi vision, AI may do a better job than typical human beings because the philosophy is there. The third inspiring philosophical thought I gained from the AIR procession is that when I did my it's called Recyber Art History, the series of work, the data set actually is over 1 billion. It's from different corner of the earth. Different like African children, they want to upload the birthday cake to open source version to the website, and I earned that. And there may be a Latam lady upload a rose she loved to the website, and I used over 1 billion data set to train again. And one generation, then one generation. There's so many chaos, but they're definitely showing up some image I could recognize immediately: Picasso, Monet, Dali, immediately. And I saw there is a logical, beautiful things just came out from the chaos. Am I doing a simulation to the whole Earth history? Am I doing the only thing that only contemporary artists, post-contemporary artists in some way? The digital arts, the AI tool we're using is a very strong tool and unique, different from 1,000 years or 500 years ago. So I think there may be another harder challenge for the teachers major in art history because the tools, the producing energies is changing, and they have to answer the question. And we may have to define what is digital art, what is the bad digital art after 2 generations, like our children. They have the power to define what is the artworks could represent like 2023 Earth, typical human beings, mental life. I don't know, and yeah. That's it.
No, it is. It is. I think we're in a very interesting space now, or a time in civilization, in humanity, however you want to put it, because there is a big fear. There is a big unknown. There is also this very strong convictions in the works that we do in terms of sort of representing artists, working with artists, and sort of having that sort of collaborative conversations with our artists. And I think that's such an important point as to all three of you is this idea of collaboration, either between your partners and your artists, or even like you and your machines. I think the idea of collaboration is something that I feel is inherently quite a digital thing. In like, it's hard to be not digital without having collaborations, whether with it's with other people or like it's just especially when you think of like open source networks when everything just felt open and you could just do whatever you wanted to do. And we had a talk in the morning about DAOs, and like Nouns DAO is one of the sort of bigger DAOs in the in sort of the Web3 space, and everything they do is sort of open source and everyone can build their own stuff. So I think I want to touch back on this idea of collaboration and sort of having that balance between creativity and collaboration, and also sort of authorship, especially if you're just juggling like 40-ish artists from all corners of the globe. Like, how does that collaborative process feel like, and is it productive? Is like how what does that look like to you, Hannah?
So I actually just kind of want to take a little step back about some things that people don't realize about artists working in digital is that you're usually dealing with advanced technologies, which means that it's very rare for one person to have the kind of knowledge and specialty to really deliver a piece by themselves. If they want to do something new, they need to collaborate with many different people. And what I have noticed in our cohort is that many of them come from a similar background of CGI. And the ones who are doing something really new are very good networkers. And there's an interesting publication from Serpentine Galleries called Future Art Ecosystems. And their very first edition talks about this topic, especially that there is no support system for digital artists working in advanced technologies. They're just on their own. And that is where I realized that I can actually provide with economies of scale to go out and bring these different types of specialists or technologies, partnerships and products. And so collaboration is not just within our group, collaboration is actually beyond the group. And that is already what's happening. One of our artists working with, someone who specializes in sensors or lighting, kinetic, like that opens up the door for all of our other artists with different styles, so different subject matter. And I think that's where the most interesting collaboration happens.
Which leads me to my like it ties perfectly, because I was supposed to ask Elio about Zheng Lu's work. If you've walked past the booth, you've seen this sort of like stainless steel silver sculpture right in the middle of the space. And I think, I saw the process video, and it's, it looks such a complex thing to do. Sculpture is complex, but with the added ideas of sensors, and I think it was like 3D mapping before actually pouring into the cast and all that whole process, it's no longer only a like sculpture. The practice of sculpture is no longer only sort of a physical thing. It becomes an interaction between machine, hand, eye, and material as well. So Ilio, if you want to talk more about Zheng Lu's work and how sort of that collaboration, and again, it's sort of bringing, like, clay has been around for centuries even, but sort of how does that translate in his work? Yeah.
Yeah, the whole exhibition we presented here is called Dialogues, and actually all of the artists we introduced have it's all around human and machine collaboration. So Su Guangchong, who's already in the VNA, and by the way, yesterday M Plus Museum came to confirm an acquisition, and as you said, Zheng Lu, Young Caleb, Ezer Gunduz, these are all artists that either utilize AI, robotics, or have a very in-depth relationship with machines in order to achieve, as I was mentioning earlier, like this very defined and perfection of their genre, of their style. And so the whole exhibition is around that. But as you said, Zheng Lu, of course, is a very interesting artist, and for us, it's very interesting to see. For example, he has a very small following on Instagram, which really shows that is not about hype, is not about, but you know, if you walk, I think you guys, I mean, I didn't even know, but he's like in some major square
Yeah,
here.
in I believe it's in Quarry Bay. There's like a 4 meter
Correct.
sculpture from Zhenglu. Yeah.
I mean, we've been wanting to work with Zhenglu for, I think, for 3 or 4 years. I mean, the moment we saw it, we were just amazed. But like with any really good artist, is like so impossible to get to. And finally, through a collector, we had a friend, and we managed to sign him, and it's just been unbelievable. I mean, his work is, you know, huge monumental sculptures. I mean, here we brought one of his smallest pieces, but yeah, there's a very big, it's interesting to see the digital process that's required nowadays to achieve physical traditional contemporary art that has this very incredible appeal, both visually, emotionally, that you're totally drawn into it. And also, I feel how important is for digital artists to really learn more about how also the contemporary world. So, for example, you know, we've met because of some collectors that we shared here, and the recent Refik Anadol drop that we did, Winds of Yawanawa, and and that was for us very important to introduce the print element in a, you know, generative collection. It's become the biggest collection of the last 2 years on OpenSea. 6,000 ETH in 2 months. Pretty crazy. But again, it was all about the art. And also very interesting how art, and when it's done at that level, can really do something to change the world. Like in this particular collection, you know, we raised over 2 million for the Yawanawa tribe in the Amazon. We're building a sacred village over there thanks to Impact One and, you know, the team of Scorpios and Soho House. So I think coming from the contemporary world and tapping into for us, the crypto art since as early as 2018. We were the first gallery to accept cryptocurrency throughout the whole portfolio in 2018. And then from there, we launched Portrait of an Era, which was the largest NFT exhibition ever presented. And, you know, Fidenza, CryptoPunks, Autoglyphs, Cherniak. You still with us? Yeah. Cool. No, all good. And then, you know, but for us was a thread. And I think the digital world is very much now understanding how important is the contemporary art as part of it, and they cannot be two separate worlds. They have to be the same, especially if it wants to survive. And, you know, PFP collections are having a, you know, a bit of a struggle at the moment, and it's obvious why. Because there is definitely some art form, and but it's very much built on hype, on buying something that you resell. So, you know, maybe that's more something for tokens rather than for art. You know, galleries have managed to build prices and, you know, keep value by building scarcity, which is something, you know, all the major luxury brands do, from Hermes to Chanel or wherever. Like, if you want something, you cannot have it. Like, especially if you want something good, you have to wait. And, you know, but when you do have it, it's really worth something. They offer you incredible kind of customer service and so on. And this is something that's very important for the art world. And in the digital world, it's been, you know, even so much worse in terms of, you know, rug pulls and collections disappearing, and you know, fakes and copies and this and that. And I think it's quite interesting that there was this boom, and it showed how much interest there is in digital art, in new forms of any sort of visual art. But there has to be a very in-depth, you know, research process from both the artist and, you know, working together with, you know, the right teams and galleries to achieve, you know, something that can last the test of time.
Yeah. I think this idea now of how AI is always a big conversation and over the past year or two. But, you know, we know generative art is not a new thing. Generative art has existed since probably the 80s and 90s. But now there's this uptick because sort of everyone is onboarding themselves with sort of algorithmic systems, although we have always been part of an algorithmic system with Facebook, Instagram, whatever. But I think that we were more spectators rather than active participants in a sense. But because of, I think ChatGPT sort of just made everyone realize that, oh, I can actually use something for something, and I'm not just a piece of data that companies can use me for. So I think Ting Song, I want to ask you is, well, like, having sort of been very into this tech AI space, um, what are the attitudes of like galleries or any contemporary projects that you speak to? Are they quite hesitant? Are they like, oh, that's not real? Or, how does that conversation unfold? Because, our curatorial decision to have digital art fair have a bit of a big focus on generative art is timely because we are using this as an educational platform, and there is, with 2 years ago NFTs and stuff, there is a lot of fluff around, there is a lot of whatever.
Be brave, bubble.
Exactly, yeah. But I think so, having that conversation about, when you travel globally to all these conferences, are the attitudes, the big sort of saying is AI art is not art, things like that. So how do you sort of navigate that process, and is maybe the contemporary art world ready for this, like how's that?
I'll share 3 points with all of the audiences. The first, there will be a reply to Elio. You mentioned Chanel. Chanel's all over the world, the first and the only crypto artist Chanel shoot is me. And during that procession, the working staff privately said to me, Miss Ting Song, you are the first. I think you may be the last because the other ones they're not legal. so it's a joke, but actually Chanel culture they named the video as Dare. It's Dare to challenge, Dare to be the rebellion. And so for all the digital artists, especially for the full-time AI artists, have to be challengers. The challengers means they have to educate the collectors themselves. For the second, that I just finished my first Los Angeles solo exhibition, and 1 year ago I delivered the first Manhattan solo exhibition of my own, and the gallery owners I chose have to satisfy two points. The first is they're young. The second, that they they're born in TikTok generation. They are familiar with the smartphone using, and they totally understand what is GitHub and how to install a MetaMask wallet. I think they're very important to me because if one of the senior collectors, and he or she is a very admirable collector, of course, but he or she doesn't know a little bit about MetaMask nor GitHub, I think it will be a little bit gap for him or she to understand what I'm really doing. For the third, I have to say it's very cruel that if you want to be a full-time AI artist, you have to be a brilliant PM or developer yourself, because it's an ongoing revolution on one side. So we have to keep up with the technology growth, which is really quick and really savage. So in my eyes, all the young generation gallery owners, such as Hannah, Elio, they have the sense and the instinct that digital artwork will make something happen. And they will be like the living art history in our age. But we still have a long way to go. We have to collaborate, as Herman mentioned. We have to build in the digitalness by bridging for a new ecosystem. So for a new ecosystems, who are they? The first is the traditional collectors. The second, especially the museum collecting system and the scholar system, even the medium curator system. Actually, for example, Art Dubai's director Benny, because Art Dubai, 15 years old, very popular art fair of the world, and their first digital expo last year, one of the venue's curators is me. It's me that taught Benny how to install MetaMask, which is a little bit difficult for her. And there's so many very senior experienced adorable and cutting edge guy, they just cannot make one step forward to have their first art block. No, no meta marks. So we have to give them tools and give them how to do it, the methods. For the second, that recently I've been asking to myself if I'm capable of educating more new collectors for the whole NFP and the AIR industry. Because when I was 19 years old, I was taking my bachelor degree in Beijing. I translated several blockchain related tech documents from English to Chinese. So that's why a lot of the very OG pioneers in blockchain industry, they knew me when I was a little girl. And I think there could be, but we have to deliver the best. And the needs, the acts for buying a digital artwork, I think hasn't been totally satisfied. And what's the needs? Even they don't know. I don't know either. But we'll finally figure out. And that's why we have to bridge for a new ecosystem. Yeah.
I agree. I think you said a lot of good points, but there's one point I don't think is accurate. You said the young gallerists such as Hannah and Elio. I think Elio's not young, so I think that's yeah.
Yeah. Everyone is young in the room, super young.
Yeah. Anyway, so I think this idea again of like, it's not a new ecosystem. I think it's a hybrid, like a symbiotic relationship kind of thing. And it's interesting. This is the second panel of the day that I've done, and I think it's almost like this sort of decentralized dream. I was in the DAO talk this morning, and this whole, and it was a really productive talk. But then we went into a lot of talk about challenges and about problems, where obviously financially that's a big problem, stability is a big problem, but also fully decentralized sort of networks are hard to maintain, and it.
Well, try put one on OpenSea, see what happens. we had our DAO. We launched our DAO November last year, Hoffa DAO, and with our pass, and it was very niche, and it was like I mean, Leo from Anzac was helping us a lot, and it was mainly for our collectors and thing. And then of course after the Refic drop, everyone started just buying these DAO passes like crazy. And then we got a letter like last week from OpenSea saying, oh, your DAO is a security, blah blah blah. We cannot list this, and they just like removed. They were like, okay, we'll go on Blur now. But it's crazy. It like you think so much about decentralized ecosystems and everything, and you realize that actually we're still so behind. And as soon as you try to push the boundaries a little bit, they just come after you.
So it was like, at Digital Offer, we were thinking of having a sort of DAO system as well, because it is this idea, if the people can vote or have a say in what works they want on the wall, which galleries they want to see, which artists they want to bring in, if they can have a say in that, they'll purchase it, because that this is who they want to see. But also there will be a lot of challenges with that, because then you'll have sort of maybe the same 10 names, and what about representation of other artists? And then for us, it's about bringing other artists into the game as well. So the challenge of DAOs and decentralization and this new ecosystem and all these buzzwords from 2-3 years ago, it's effective, yes, but I think we are in that stability point where we're a bit like realists now within sort of the digital field, and we're a bit more like, okay, what exploration, experimentation has led it this far? And I think we should also still continue to find alternate methods of sort of functioning in the art world and in the art ecosystem. But I think that dream is quite hard to push forward. So. Do you have any
It's a bit like building a utopic city.
Yeah,
the
exactly.
perfect.
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, Hannah, any thoughts on like any of the artists you work with have any DAOs or any decentralized notions?
Well, I mean, because we're a collective, there was this question of should we be run as a DAO, and even as a collective, because traditionally collectives are artist run, and so I had to ask them the question: listen, you guys have been around for a while before I joined. If you guys wanted to do things, you guys would have made them happen. And so you guys are all busy. Everyone's busy. And It's hard enough being an artist. Why not that support come from people who are not competing with you as an artist? Not that they're competing, like they're a team, but it's um, running an organization. There are different kinds of considerations, and DAO. That's why DAOs have to hire managers, right? They outsource that. It's very hard to do it internally, and that's part of the reason why Happy Futurism does exist as a label. And when you asked earlier if the artists like collaborate together, the idea was this is a huge topic amongst their artists because they're like, we need to do a show, but all of us do something. And I'm like, all 55 of you guys from 26 countries and you don't all speak the same language. And and like for me to keep in touch with every single one of you guys for 1 hour a month is 55 hours a month. Like that's all I do for a full-time job then. So I'm like, even amongst you guys, you need to work in smaller groups. And so that is what we're seeing actually, natural tendencies to come together, and also me kind of socially engineering you two should talk. Like you guys are in a room for a reason, and you guys are all have some kind of thing that you guys are working on that would, gel well together. So to me, this example of governance of like how community works together, completely decentralized, has not been set forth yet as something that we can say, that works so well. So for me, let's work in smaller communities and really build very firm, solid foundations, and then we can do something bigger.
I have my own Ting Dao. Ting is my name, as we all know. So Ting Dao's mission is to educate developing countries' children to use AI to do films. All the methods I use to do my films, I will open source them to other children, especially in developing countries. And of course, they will mint some of them on NFTs based on their interest. So yeah, there's another way for me to reply to the title is bridging a new ecosystem. And for being decentralized for a community, I think let's be hopeful, because being decentralized may not mean that we don't have any center. Instead, it may mean that we have different strong but small centers instead of only one strongest center. So the OpenSea, we all know the problem. so being different will be very healthy for every ecosystem. That's my hope.
Which is quite interesting, because that goes back to my point of speaking to my boss, where there's not one art world, there's many art worlds. So yeah, I think we've got about like last 10 minutes or so. If there's any more questions or any burning desires from anybody on the floor.
You all wear deep black t-shirts and don't have any questions.
Any questions for me?
So what's next for this show? I mean, I honestly, comparing to some of the other, big art fairs that we participate in, Art Miami, etc. I found this show so boutique, interesting. Felt like a bit of a family. It's our first time, the way we've been welcomed, and like the way you guys do these tours with the VIPs, and like last night the bar, the DJ. It was just like so cool. You're changing it overnight, and you're doing the dinner and thing. I just found it so incredible, and it's been really a pleasure to be here. We found an incredible response. I mean, from the local, from the best museum here in Hong Kong to the collectors, and I really want to know what's next, and what can we do to make this bigger and spread the word on this amazing fair.
I think next for me personally is some sleep. Next for I think all of us is some sleep.
I haven't slept in 3 months.
Oh gosh. But I think sort of the important focus is again opening up a collectorship, opening up more ideas about how do I collect digital art. I think that's a really important thing. Is sort of making things more accessible than they appear to be. Like it's. I think for us, it's we're always trying to expand and try to work with newer, bigger galleries. But I think it's about the soul of it is still intact. And I think, you said about the whole bespoke sort of tour service that we give. And I think, let's say in 2 years' time, when if instead of 10 booths and 10 galleries, if we have 50 booths and 50 galleries, would we still be able to do that? I would like to think so, because I think it's sort of I mean, to curate is to care, right? It's the sort of the Roman or Latin word for care is curate. Yes, yeah, I think so. Yeah, yeah. So I think sort of the effort of this is a effort of care, a labor of care, and I think for us, we sort of, I was speaking to Sam from Culture Vault, and they're from Australia, which for me, it's like you don't in the art world, you don't really see that region as a not a player, but you get overshadowed by the Asias and the Europes and the Americas. But what's really fascinating was that we understand in this space there is most digital art NFT platforms, curator platforms, whatever. They don't really have a space like this, because you have usually it's like a fintech week, and there's like a small room for the art stuff, and it's like where the art isn't the focus, and the technology is the focus. Yeah, great. Like, technology is great. The art is also great. But why not put the art first, and have that focus for everyone to sort of understand? So I think in the next coming months, we have a lot of sort of reshuffling to do, and sort of rethinking, because the digital art fair we started 2 years ago is not a digital art fair now. In a lot of ways, the market has changed, the sort of perceptions of towards tokens have changed, the collectorship has changed, Hong Kong has changed. So it is a lot of retuning and retuning and retuning. And even like Hannah, with your 55 artists, that can happen in digital art fair, you know? If it's like a really huge scale sort of project. And I think that's what we're always looking at doing, is like scaling and scaling and scaling, because we're all digital in a sense. We all have like that sort of ideas to process and things to show, and modes of showing have changed so much. So it's not that hard to ship a USB or like send an artwork, instead of 50 galleries that send prints and paintings, and that's that model still exists, yes, but for us it's more easier, for good or for bad, to just have like an encrypted file where we can just display that. So for us it's scaling up and
Would you
opening up.
ever consider expanding the fair to another city like London?
That was my
or-
question too, because like you said, then it could be a moving thing.
I
Like,
think there is definitely a space, like the experience I've seen here, this boutiqueness, and but also, the way you guys operate as a team and the network you have. I mean, I know for sure in London it would be very welcome, and the good thing is you don't need so much space. And yeah, like you said, logistical wise is,
Easy. Yeah, I think that's all. That's in the works. It takes about 6 to 9 months to plan something like this, and it takes up a lot of time and effort. So I think
that would mean no sleep for you for about 2 years.
yeah, you would yeah, just appear in London with like a new fair. But it's just this idea that like Hong Kong's great and Hong Kong's thriving, but Hong Kong has an issue of space, and it becomes very tough because it's hard to find a space like this. And I really appreciate K11 for all the support and the partnerships. And then the next step up is your big convention centers, where we're like your centrals and your Basels with like 100 galleries or whatever. So the in between space is really tough to find. So maybe London makes sense, because I know the old Printworks sort of club is closed, and they've got I've got friends who work in there who's like, yeah, we'll happily host you. So Europe has always been on the mind. Dubai is an option because of how hot things are. America as well, but it's just sort of, yeah, I think sort of having that core message, the core soul of digitalness, and seeing where that takes us. So yeah, I mean, the world is our oyster, as they like to say. As the world is the oyster, our oyster. Yeah, something
Lobster,
like
I
that.
think.
Yeah, something like that. Okay, anyone else with anything? No. Um, this was a bit impromptu. I think Elio sort of requested like to do something, and we were like, yeah, like let's do a talk, and roped Hannah in, roped Ting Song in, and then here we are. So I think it was really interesting the perspectives that we all shared, very sort of different, but also all in the same vein. And I think with that, I'd like to say thank you to all our speakers and also our 50,000 guests in the audience.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good night. Bye.